So today's video is a little different because it's not a video essay and it's not a review or really anything that I usually cover on this channel. I just wanted to experiment with something that is unscripted, that is off the cuff, and just have a conversation with you guys about a sort of topic that I've wanted to talk about for quite some time. And that conversation is on the topic of video game adaptations. And we've been getting a lot of those recently, so I think this is especially prevalent here. We've had some really great stuff recently, like The Last of Us on HBO, and Arcane, and Cyberpunk Edgerunners, and Resident Evil. Okay, maybe not the last one, but we've had some pretty damn good stuff and some not so great stuff. I mean, I guess more recently we've had some good stuff, but, you know, video games have always had that connotation or that idea in mind of the video game curse. That's where it came from, that video game adaptations are typically bad. I think they've gotten better over the years, but yeah, either way, good or bad, we are, you know, it's inevitable that we're going to get more coming down the pipeline as the years go by, especially with the success of The Last of Us. That is not going to slow down at all. So now I thought would be a good time to talk about some games that I'd actually like to see adapted. The first one is BioShock, and that one is actually one that's been trying to get off the ground for a very long time. Years ago, we had a movie with Gore Verbinski at the helm, and eventually that got canned. And if you don't know who Gore Verbinski is, that is the director of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. I love those movies, not so much 4 and 5. They weren't so great either, to say the least. But, you know, I do like that creative vision, and I don't know, like, I feel like it would have been interesting to see his vision and see where that would have gone and what that might have looked like. But yeah, BioShock adaptation I think would be really, really cool. And it's actually something that we are still getting, actually, because Netflix is working on one. Now, Netflix, yes, I know, has made some really great stuff. They have Arcane and Cyberpunk Edgerunners and the Cuphead show, which I love. But the thing is, Netflix and their projects are really a hit or miss for me. I mean, sometimes I really like and dig what they're doing. Other times, you get a Resident Evil. But who knows? I was initially skeptical of The Last of Us show, even leading up to the release of the first episode. I mean, the trailers, I thought they looked better, and I was like, okay, maybe it could be good. I don't know. And then I saw the first episode and I was like, damn, this is really good. And then, you know, week after week, they just kept putting out bangers. And, you know, now I'm like, yeah, that was a great adaptation. Do I like it as much as the game? No. But I still think that it was done really, really well. And, you know, as far as adaptations go and where my expectations were at, it definitely far exceeded that. So, you know, I think maybe it's possible. It's possible. I'm not saying that it's not. That, BioShock on Netflix could be good. Now, what they would be adapting, whether that be, you know, in Rapture or Columbia, is something that's unknown to us. But what I think would be really cool for a BioShock adaptation is having it be a TV series. Now, this idea that I've had is something that I've had since I was like 15, alongside all the other ideas I have in the rest of the video, and I thought it would be really cool if we don't have one that is a direct adaptation of one of the games, like a direct retelling, but rather a sort of prequel to the first game that tells us the story of the rise and fall of Rapture. I'm thinking it could be a 3-season miniseries where we follow Andrew Ryan as our protagonist, and then maybe we could have like an antagonist who's like actually like morally good, but we're always still rooting for Andrew Ryan and the things that he does. I don't know. It was just an interesting thought I had all those years ago, and I think that if I were to make one sort of adaptation in my life, not that I have any sort of screenplay writing experience, this would be the one thing that I would do. I just feel like there's something there, you know, within BioShock's lore and, you know, Rapture itself that is so interesting and compelling that you could easily do a show based on the events that lead up to the game. Now, initially, years ago, I was super duper into Breaking Bad and Walking Dead. I was like on that high, and so I was like, oh yeah, this would be amazing on AMC. But AMC doesn't exactly have the budget for that, or at least I don't think. And now, with the success of The Last of Us, that being on HBO, I just feel like this would actually work a lot better on there, especially tonally, and, the budget is there, and I don't know. I think that could be done really well, and I think that they could really do it justice. Next up, we have Mass Effect. This one is actually currently being worked on by Amazon Prime. We don't really know any details of that either, as to what it's going to be about, but I imagine they'd probably want to adapt the original trilogy, and I don't know if I would want that either, just because those games and BioWare games in general are all about player choice, and I feel like if you were to make a sort of television show or a movie directly based on those games, it almost feels like it eliminates player choice. I know this is kind of a crazy idea or thing to say, but I feel like it just takes away from that sort of special thing that makes a BioWare game, or a decision-based game a decision-based game. And again, I know that the story follows a particular pattern that is just completely scripted, and I know that your choices don't ultimately matter by the end of the game, but I don't know, I just don't really want to see like Mass Effect 3's ending. Now, I'm not going to really get much into it because that's a whole other can of worms that I will address in a later video, but I feel like if they were to do a show or a movie, that would have to have a particular ending in mind, and I don't know, it just almost feels like it canonizes that in a way. I know it doesn't, but to me it would just always be weird that it's like, okay, that is the one that they've chosen, and I don't know if I could remove it from like my subconscious headcanon, if that makes sense. I don't know, I'm weird. But if they are doing this Mass Effect show or movie, I think that they could really branch out of that trilogy, or even Andromeda, and tell us new stories, or maybe even tell us stories within the expanded world and the lore that we already got, like the Homeworlds comics or even the Elusive Man comic. I think there are really interesting stories to tell there, and I would love to see them be played out on the big screen. But one idea I had is really, really weird, a very strange idea. Again, I was 15 when I thought of all of these, but one idea that wasn't like the rest of them was an animated series based on Garrus Vakarian and his time at CSEC. I was thinking it could be like a buddy cop show, and I was really super into Suits and White Collar at the time, and I thought it would just be really interesting to have like a dynamic between, Garrus and another character, like a mentor or something, like a figure, right? And it just is like a sort of show that is a precursor to the events to the first game before he meets Commander Shepard, and you get to see what he does and what his time was there. I don't know. It's just a thought. I don't know if any of that makes any sense, but yeah. Next up, we have Portal. Portal is another one that I think just works really well. I mean, like, think about it. We have, we could retell the stories and the events of the first and second game, especially with, Chell and, that adventure she goes on. And then we have GLaDOS being probably one of the most, recognizable villains in any video game ever. Like, yeah, she's like up there with like Handsome Jack and Voss and a bunch that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head, but she's definitely up there. She's a great villain, and I just feel like, having her in some type of show, having a Portal show would just be really, really cool. And I don't know, there's just another great story to tell there. But again, that's not what I had in mind at the time. Now, I think that we could still have a great 2-season show or like 2 movies that could retell those events. But what I had in mind was quite different, because I was thinking we could have like an animated show about Peabody and Atlas and the antics that they get up to. I know, it's so weird, but I was thinking that it would be really cool to like have like a sort of spin-off side show. I think it would just be really interesting to see, like a little side spin-off show of those 2 characters and the things that they get up to. It would be like much more lighthearted, and I don't know, I just think that it would be really cool to explore if they could do something like that. Again, full of wacky ideas. I mean, at the time I thought, oh, that would be great on ABC. ABC, man? What? But yeah, I don't know. I think, yeah, these 2 shows that I have in mind. I think Portal, again, I think the nature of it, that is something that I feel like actually could work on Netflix. Next up, we have another game that is actually apparently in the same universe as Portal. And yep, you guessed it, it's Half-Life. Now, I mostly want to see a Half-Life show that retells the events of the first 2 games, and then have a 3rd season that tells us what happens after. If we are not getting a Half-Life 3, which, if you haven't played it, there was a cliffhanger at the end of 2, and I think we deserve to see what happens next. If we're not going to get a Half-Life 3, give us, like, a show or something. Continue the story. Tell us what happens. Please, Valve, please. But, you know, it's Valve. That's never going to happen. Now, the final one that I have in mind, which is one that I actually think is the one that I would like to see most. It's actually rumored that Illumination is going to be working on this as their next project after the Super Mario movie releases, and that is The Legend of Zelda. Now, the Super Mario movie is actually something that I'm really, really hyped for and super excited to see later next month, but initially, I was actually really skeptical of that as well. When they first announced it during the Nintendo Direct, and, you know, they talked about how it was going to be Chris Pratt, I was like, dude, this whole thing is wild. And I thought this was just a really insane moment, and I was like, what is happening right now? Is this real? But then, I mean, you know, then we had the Game Awards and that moment. So, you know, what is real at this point? But with all that being said, we had trailers, and we got to see more and more of the Mario movie, and I actually got really excited for what we had, you know. And now, especially with Jack Black as Bowser, I'm like, damn, this is shaping up to be really, really cool. And so, you know, I think that Illumination could actually do a decent job with Zelda. I think it would be cool to see what they could do with it, but that isn't the first thing that I have in mind. Now, I think the perfect way to do this would be to make it into an animated series. I know a lot of people have been like fan casting Tom Holland in a live action movie, but no, I think an animated series would work better, which is weird that they've never actually done that before.
Well, excuse me, princess.
But I think that if Nintendo were to take another stab at it, I think that they could do a really, really great job with it. So I was thinking, instead of having each season be each game, like I had suggested with the other games on this list, I think it would work better if we had each season dedicated to each hero. So one season could be about the hero of the skies, another season about the hero of time, the next about the hero of Twilight or the winds. And I don't know, I just think that it would be really, really cool to have like each season dedicated to each one of those iterations of Link. And, you know, we could have like one sort of through line story that connects them all, you know, like actually, you know, directly, and not just like a loose placement of the timeline. Like, I actually have the Zelda encyclopedia on my shelf. Let me actually just go grab that. Oh. Okay, and here we go. If you notice, you know, we have the entire history of Hyrule here in the Zelda encyclopedia. But if you also notice and make note down there that actually this timeline is different from the Hyrule Historia, which was published like 5 years before this. And the reason for that is because the timeline is actually kind of loose. There's no like set timeline, and I think that if they were to do a sort of animated series like this that retells the events of all these games and the time spent with Link and Zelda and Ganon and their whole history, that we could have one sort of like flowing timeline that is sort of set in stone. I know that, you know, the timeline branches and the timeline is convoluted as it is, but I don't know, I just think it would be really, really cool to have something that is more tangible in that way. I don't know, I'm just someone that really loves lore, in case you haven't noticed. But with the art style, I think we could have something really awesome here, like with the cel shading of Breath of the Wild. And I think that was especially clear to me when I played through Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, which is something that I know a lot of people don't like. I know Warriors games aren't the style that people usually gravitate towards, but I actually really enjoyed that one. And especially the way that it was told, it felt like a movie of its own. And I think that if they were to do something in that art style, it would be really cool. That, or maybe even Arcane. I know that sounds like a really weird choice as well, but I don't know. I think that might be cool too. But hey, you know, that's what we're here for. Just a whole bunch of crazy ideas where I just speak right off the cuff and just talk about all the crazy things, just unscripted, and just let all my cards out on the table, like these. That was bad. Okay. Anyway, let me know what kind of games that you would like to see adapted. I'm actually really interested to hear your thoughts, so let me know down in the comments down below. I don't know if I'm going to continue doing this sort of style of video in the future. This was more of just an experiment. I've actually had to do several takes of this because I am not good with unscripted stuff. But yeah, if you guys like this stuff, please let me know if you want to see more of this kind of content. And yeah, until next time, I'll see you guys soon.